Dame Janet, what an absolute honor to sit down with you. I feel like I've won the lottery in a way.
Oh, so do I.
I first came across your name. I'm not somebody who grew up in opera. I was in choral music and went to college to be a music education major. And it was there that I started taking voice lessons. One of the first songs that I was given by my teacher was for competition, and it was Rainstorm from Michael Head's 3 Songs of Venice. Mm-hmm. And at the top it said, dedicated to Dame Janet Baker. I said, I wonder who that is, because I knew nothing at that time. And you were literally one of the very first singers, I think there was Pavarotti, Morella Freni, and you, that flipped on in my head, and I thought, this is opera, this is classical singing, this is the voice, and you've been with me ever since. So to sit with you, I feel like you've been walking alongside me this whole time, and so to finally meet you and speak with you it's a real joy.
Oh, what a wonderful thing to say. And I think when we met for the first time the other night in London, we talked about meeting together, didn't we? And I never dreamt that we'd have this opportunity to talk about the things that really interest us, because you're very busy at the moment, and it's like a huge present to me to have the chance to talk to you. It really is.
Well, it's mutual then, so it's basically Christmas Day. I have a million questions I could ask, but I'll just start jumping in. There are so many things I admire about your artistry, and one of them is your utter commitment to the music and the text and the composer. Those are very separate things, and they're also one enormous approach to a performance and to art. And I'm so curious if that is something that you built, if it was something that from the beginning was your purpose, where you came to this level of integrity of serving the music and the text.
Perhaps it comes from reading a great deal. I've read all my life. I learned to read very, very early before I went to school. So the written word has always fascinated me. And language itself I find exciting and beautiful. And to think that our job connects both those two things together, to me, speaks of a tremendously powerful art form, because we have these two extraordinary things, both of which are equally important, not at the same time perhaps, but which are together are the total expression of what we do. So that interest has been there all my life. With words, the great composers, I find, the truly great composer knows what to do with words to music.
Yes.
So they make the job not easy, but possible. I think somebody like Benjamin Britten, for instance, the English language, everybody says is impossible to sing. It's got a lot of consonants. But there are ways around that. We cheat, don't we?
Yes.
We sing long vowel sounds. When you're dealing with a piece of music which has an equal responsibility to both these aspects, I think it's the most exciting thing in the world.
So are you, when you're on the stage and you were singing, were you thinking about sound? Were you thinking about text? Did it vary?
I suppose I was fortunate to have a very solid technique, so that at least I didn't have to think where the next note was coming from. I didn't have to think about the purely technical difficulties. They were mostly under fairly good control at the end of the rehearsal period. What I did do very early was look at the character, pick up the score and find out what the person was that I was about to embark on. I think that was terribly important to me, because to find out, something like Maria Stuarda, which you're going to do, aren't you?
I've done her and we'll do her again,
yes. The historic Maria Stuarda, if you read the histories, she's often sidestepped and called a silly woman or not respected in the way. But if you look at Donizetti's Maria Stuarda, you see something quite different, and you start to think, this woman had a group of people around her who stayed loyal to her all these years. Now, what sort of human being is that your friends stay by you when they could have their heads chopped off the next day? That sort of discovery of the person you're going to be is important to me, and I think it takes a lot of time to get into the levels it should be, so that you don't have to think about it when you go on stage.
Absolutely.
To me, that's very exciting. In the way that a Schubert song, the character of a Schubert song, I would treat in exactly the same way. To me, there's no difference in the characters in Lieder. They are miniature operas, but with the same sort of intensity between the words and the music that an opera has, in a different way. The two things must be, I think, very, very deeply explored, so that the singer's imagination, which is desperately important, can look at a word and it conjures up something in them because of their experience of life.
Right.
So a certain word to you might not trigger off the same thing in me, which is what makes the same repertoire so exciting. We don't ever sing it the same as anybody else. It's wonderful.
Right.
Your interpretation of something is you, bound by the score, but what you've discovered from life and what affects you deeply is this triggering thing that connects with something you know and have felt, and makes either a character in an opera or a song deeply, deeply personal, while still being faithful to the words and music.
Was that a criteria for you in selecting music? Did you have to have a personal connection, in particular to the Lieder pieces, but also the characters that you chose?
I think if you're an actress, which is what we have to be, the imagination becomes extremely important, and it's also nice to explore things that are perhaps a bit out of character, so that you're not singing the same kind of, although probably you do sing a certain type of role best. It's nice to be able to use the imagination in a different way for something, a character that's not quite familiar to you, and explore that as a sort of different side of your own personality, I suppose.
I'm curious because if I'm not mistaken, you sang Vitellia and Clemenza, but did you ever sing Sesto?
Not on the stage, no.
Ah, see, that's
No.
interesting.
Interesting, yes.
Because that was perhaps not the obvious choice.
Absolutely.
What did you find with her, performing
with
with
Vitellia?
Yeah.
She's the baddie of the piece.
Yeah.
It's the same with Kate in Owen Wingrave that the Briton wrote. She's a character on the dark side, and having played a lot of heroine types of people, to have a role that really explored the strength and maybe the not so likable parts of one's personality, which we all have, I found challenging. And of course, people do like to stereotype you. They like to stereotype film stars, don't they? And if a film star or an actress goes out of the range which she's firmly placed in,
We get nervous.
people don't like it.
Yeah, we get very nervous.
But it's very important for us to do that, I think. Well,
I
we
think
should.
I agree completely, because then I think also vocally, I always think this as well, if you get into a certain groove, you'll never be able to get out of that.
Right.
You know, I tell young singers about practicing coloratura. I said, make sure you practice it at different speeds and different dynamics.
Right.
Because otherwise you'll get in this point where that's all you can do. Character-wise, if you maybe are the ingenue or something, you can go into that. I think the great artists have a big appetite to explore the psychology of different people, to explore different kinds of stories. And I agree completely with you that stepping outside of the comfort zone is really important. May not always be successful.
Quite.
But in the longevity of an artist, what it will tell us about ourselves and about the art form, I think, is absolutely worth it.
Yes, you're right.
Conductors, you've worked with
Yes.
greats and had long-term relationships with a lot of them. I'm curious, the ones that you really connected with, you must have had some sort of kind of marriage on this commitment to exploring the text and the characters. What were some of these great experiences like for you?
I think it's like meeting people with whom you bond. You can feel a bond with people, with strangers. Something in the chemistry strikes a chord. And working with people like that is the peak experience, because you've got to adapt and work with all sorts of people, don't you? With whom perhaps you don't have this musical bond, or are not on the same, or asked to do things which go against your nature.
Yes.
I think particularly nowadays, that is very, very hard. I would find it terribly difficult to make a move on stage, for instance, that I didn't felt from the character.
Yes.
In other words, you're not acting, your body is responding to what you're imagining and thinking.
It's actually, I think, nearly impossible to do, because it's not congruent. It doesn't.
Well, somebody who understands that, either a director or a conductor who can feel the way you're moving musically and can go with that, always obedient to the score. I mean, one doesn't mess about with that. It's a mindset, and if you meet people with the same mindset, it's very exciting in every sphere of life, isn't it?
Absolutely. What did you look for that first day of rehearsal? You walk in, perhaps it's a new conductor you haven't worked with. What do you look for from the conductor or director, actually?
A sense of being allowed to share in what he's trying to achieve. I remember early rehearsals at Glyndebourne with Peter Hall, who could, of course, come straight from the theatre. The early rehearsals of the things we used to do at Glyndebourne were very, very exciting, because we had a day of talking, we had a day of listening to what his idea, his ethos of a certain piece was, and think about that and go with that. But it's a question of balance between doing as you're told, which of course you must do, and react and do the mechanical things, and also being allowed to participate in something that comes from the spur of the moment. And I remember what we were doing, Orfeo at Glyndebourne, and we'd been into quite a lot of rehearsal weeks. And at some point I had a scene with the chorus, and something made me take one of the chorus members by the hand. I was passing down the stage with them, and I suddenly began to touch them, and they suddenly began to touch me, which was not, we hadn't been, it just happened.
Right.
But to have the freedom of somebody, of a director who would accept that and incorporate it and see that it had come purely out of the spur of the moment, that is
that's the magic.
Bliss.
Yeah, that's the magic of it.
You can't expect it with everybody, but it does happen. The rest is, I think, a question of professionalism, and you're working with your colleagues and extracting from an experience as much as you can.
Did you find that there were times, because again, one of my great regrets is that I wasn't able to hear you live. I have so many of your recordings, and now I've got almost everything through this new box set. But the sense that I have is you had this deep integrity, again, about serving the music, and a very strong idea of what you did well and of what would serve the piece best. Did you run up against difficulties in trying to, I say the word fight maybe, fight for that vision and fight for the integrity of a piece? Did you, and I ask that particularly as a woman, I think.
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
In terms of, were you ever seen as belligerent or difficult, or did you feel like you had to fight harder for the things you believed in?
Surrounding the musical experience as a person?
Within the rehearsal process, within the...
Right.
Did you meet resistance?
I think I must have been very, very lucky. I can only think of one production in my life where I was psychologically uncomfortable with what I was required to do. I thought of leaving the production because I can't be true to myself. It ruined the whole thing for me. It spoilt what I thought the shape and the journey was. The journey was wrong, right from the beginning. And I thought, I can't do this to my colleagues. We've got to, I think if you're a principal singer, you have a tremendous responsibility to those working around you, don't you?
Yeah.
You have to...
You're a leader.
Yes, in the best sense of the word,
Yeah.
incorporate that. And I think it would have upset them very much if I'd done that, for my own particular reason, which perhaps wasn't in the least important to anybody else. But it did destroy the thing that I'd built up over all the weeks of learning it. And suddenly, this was a completely alien idea to me.
Ah. How did you then go out on opening night and be in it?
Not wholeheartedly, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Not wholeheartedly. I think modern productions that I see these days make life extremely difficult for the singer if the action and the characterization somehow doesn't go with the music and is upheld by it. I think the conductor and the director have a tremendous responsibility in freeing you in order that you come onto the stage and you can be this
Yes.
character. It's a question of being something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not acting it.
No, you are in every moment of that, and the choices are yours. It's spontaneous.
Yeah.
You're creating it on
That's
the
right.
spot. If you've done all the preparation
Sure.
in the right ways, you were talking about having the technique being solid, so you go out, you're not thinking about it.
Right.
You are that. That's, I know for me, the criteria I want from a director. I'm willing to try anything in the rehearsal process because you never know what you may
True.
find.
True.
But I
Very
need
good.
to understand why. That's all I ask from a director is help me understand why I'm doing this. As you said earlier, it's impossible for me to take a step that feels false. And I just find that in some cases that's really prohibitive for people. The concert platform, and you premiered so many pieces and you worked with composers hand in hand. What was that process like for you? Because we're slightly similar in that way. We go back to Monteverdi and Handel in the early days of opera, but also have a real sort of sense of championing the new pieces.
Yes.
What were those experiences like with you with Britain? And
Retrospectively, I realize how very, very lucky I have been to give the opportunity of doing the different sorts of expression, opera, concert work, recording, and leader, which of course is your experience too. And I find they all feed each other. Working with a composer is a different kind of experience. Do you ever do lead recitals with concert pianists?
yes. Oh, actually, no, I haven't.
That's a different thing.
I've done Ch'io mi scordi di te, I've done concert
Yes,
repertoire with like
yes.
that, but no.
That is a very interesting thing. It's different. I'm not saying it's better. It's a different experience. And it's a different experience again doing a leader with a conductor. They bring something else to it which sheds new light on it. I'm not saying the great accompanists are outclassed. They're not. It's a different experience, not a worse or better one. I must make that clear. It's different. Exploring things with a composer, like Britten, for instance, who was a master of composition, conducting, and the keyboard. I think he's the only person I ever met who was equally gifted in those three ways. So that was an exceptional experience. He was a performer, he was a creator, and he seemed to be equally good at all those things. So working with him was unique. But working with Raymond Leppard on the early operas again was a tremendous experience because he had reshaped the scores so that the Cavalli, the Monteverdi pieces were able to be presented to an audience in an opera house.
Are you surprised at this sort of revolution that followed all of that, that now Handel is standard repertoire, Cavalli's a little bit more than it was? Could you have predicted that?
No, no. Except the fact that having sung that kind of repertoire, the Handel, Bach, Purcell, all the Baroque stuff so early on, to me was totally natural. I didn't see anything strange about it, but it is interesting how the early Monteverdis were criticised as not being authentic. Well, what was authentic? There was not hardly anything there. What Raymond Lepard made possible was a viable operatic vehicle for us, which then opened the doors to all sorts of things. But these people that I'm talking about are such an extraordinary inspiration, and partly because I decided to do my stage work in this country, I had time. It's all a question of time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
To let things, talk about things and work together as a team. Very great privilege, that.
Let it soak in, release, keep going over, releasing layers,
That's
going
right.
deeper and deeper.
Absolutely.
That is, I think, the biggest problem facing opera today is things are rushed.
It's always been the case. It's the nature of the beast, isn't it?
Yeah. You think about Rossini scribbling things at the last minute, 3 weeks to write an opera. I guess that is true. It's kind of remarkable that we actually get up for opening night. One of the things I've found, which surprised me, I trained in Houston, where they did a world premiere almost every year for something like 30 years. And the first one I took part of was really, I just thought it was, this isn't like Mozart, this isn't like Rossini, what are we wasting our time on? And I just thought, well, stupid young person, the amazing experience of getting a manuscript and having to look at it for the first time. You can't go to a recording, there's no performance tradition, you have to interpret that. And you can say to the composer, do you really mean, why is it staccato and not legato? It's completely transformed the way I open up a Rossini score, the way I open up Mozart. I like to go to that. I won't listen to recordings now until after I've really put it in my head.
Right, absolutely.
I want that dialogue with the composer directly.
Yes.
And that's been a great learning lesson, a lesson for me to learn from the new repertoire. Do you feel, and if this is a terribly tacky question, just shot, but do you feel like you did everything you wanted to do as an artist?
Absolutely.
What a great feeling. That's such a great thing to be able to say.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm so happy in older age, you know. I have no regrets whatsoever. When I think of the opportunities that were presented to me, I can't believe it, that I had all this experience, different experience. That's amazing, amazing.
That makes my heart soar. I love that you are so clear on that, because I think you are truly one of the prime examples of certainly stepping away at the absolute height of your powers, of doing it with such, like everything you did in your career, with grace and dignity. But it makes me so happy to know that you did that and you said, I am full, I've done everything. Do you miss it though? Do you still sing? Do you hum along to old recordings?
I sing the hymns in church quietly.
Oh, that's a happy church.
No, I don't sing for myself. I listen to a lot of music and a lot of amateur music. I'm involved in choirs and things like that. I go to listen to amateurs.
Beautiful.
And
because that's how you started.
Well, it is absolutely. That's
home.
Going back to one's roots. Yeah. But I feel so totally fulfilled by the thing that I've done. I had such a strong element of knowing, even from about 9 years old, a destiny. I'm sure you have. I think we do. I think people have, if they listen, we all have a destiny, everybody. Ours is quite clear-cut because we have a gift, and it seems right to give that back to the world. So our choices are easier. But the thing that makes me happiest is the fact that circumstances, my parents who encouraged me were not musical, my husband who was my manager and worked with me and travelled with me all the years and gave me that sort of upholding comfort, everything around me worked towards my vision that this is what I was born to do, and the feeling of rightness about my life and being born to sing and having the opportunity to do so. You see, this is the thing. A lot of people are born with voices and something to say, but sometimes life doesn't work out that way. How does one live with that? I didn't have that. My joy is in the fact that I was given the opportunities to do exactly what I thought I was born to do. You can't ask for more than that.
I think maybe my last curiosity that I would love to hear you speak on is about, I don't know if it's the right word, but the power of music. Its transformative powers, what it is. I know I have my own ideas about how we need it, or something, whether you call it your soul or your spirit or your whatever is your deepest self, as you said earlier, needs something like this. I'm curious to know how the music speaks to you, and then what your sensation is as the effect that it has on your public, the people who listen to you, experienced you.
From a very early age, I felt that music had an effect on me that nothing else had. When I heard any kind of music, it made me feel different from any other kind of moment in my life, a sort of a unification of myself. I'm talking retrospectively because it happened so young. I couldn't describe it then, but I realize now, as though I was so fully alive and affected by the vibration of whatever music was in a very deep way. That remains the same. I feel exactly the same now when I'm listening to a great concert, a great opera, or great singer, great orchestra. That sense of awe, I suppose I could describe it, goes through me as though every cell in my body is being, I don't know, brought to life by
charged it. And opened.
Yes,
maybe.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're open to it. So I've always felt that, and it's a marvelous feeling. You will recognize it as I speak. The effect of what I have done in music on other people is something I really don't understand. It's beyond me. I don't think it's my business to know how my performances have affected other people. I mean, I get an awful lot of wonderful feedback. I'm sure you do too, which is fantastic, isn't it, when people come and say, look, I've been listening to you and so and so and so and so.
And they need to share.
Yes, they do,
you.
and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really concern me the effect I'm having. Mm-hmm. What does concern me as a professional is, we were talking about glass a minute ago, being like a sheet of glass, which one tries through integrity and work and you know, the keeping up the professional techniques. Mm-hmm. Keep clean. You keep your glass clean. If
no
that
streaks.
Works, no streaks, no streaks. And then if you're lucky, something from this area I've just been speaking of, this total absorption in what music does to you, something of that can come through you as a personality, as a human being, which is really nothing to do with you. It comes from somewhere else. You provide the grounding and the groundwork for it. And if you've done that properly, this magic can come through. And that is what the audiences feel and other people feel. That's the power of music. It's not you as a human being. It's the power of getting yourself out of the way, in a sense, but also just thinking about the process of transmitting music like a medium. And that kind of power is nothing that I think human beings can control. You can direct it through yourself if you're lucky. So the two things, I mean, I'm grateful. I love my audiences. I loved American audiences and that kind of response. It's wonderful. I'm not decrying fame as such. It's a fantastic thing. Yeah. But to keep that within healthy bounds, I suppose I split myself up into this piece of something that the music comes through.
You're an amazing vessel.
Well,
That is such a clear, beautiful explanation about it, and it explains why I have always had such an immediate response to your music, because you're in service of it.
that's right.
Your glass is impeccably clean in terms of technique, language, all these things. And that's the me that we have to have. We have to be very self-absorbed to put ourselves in as prime a condition as we can be. But I try and tell young singers this too. I see them getting all worked up, and how do I sound? How do I sound? What do they think? Do they like me? It's like, it's not about you. It's not about me. We are serving something. And the better we make ourselves, and the freer we make ourselves, the more unobstructed this music and the message can come through.
Absolutely right.
And it's so good to hear you talk about that. And because that's what you did every second you were on the stage or in the studio. Can I say happy birthday? Happy birthday to you, my goodness. What an amazing thing.
Well, this is the best birthday present I could possibly have.
Oh my goodness.
To talk to you, it really is.
Thank you. Dame Janet, you are an inspiration to me and thousands of other people and singers, and just here's to many more.
Thank you.
Thank you.